Allow me to extend a warm welcome to all the viewers on the internet and around the world. It is sunrise on YouTube, morning on Facebook, noon on Twitter, midday on Threads, afternoon on Twitch, sunset on Instagram, and evening on Rumble. I am your host, the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, and the master of the deceptive arts. We are broadcasting live directly from the sanctum of solitude and the citadel at the end of time. Good evening, everyone. I am the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, and the master of the deceptive arts. And today I wanted us to discuss the issue of strategic maneuvering, especially when it comes to dating, relationships, and the romance wars. And indeed, to my own admittance, I am the last person to give you advice on how to start a relationship, let alone maintain a successful one. In fact, there are more than enough philosophers that can teach you what they call the art of pickup. And I assure you, many of their tactics applied correctly and sufficiently will probably work. And that's where your real problems, and quite frankly, the majority of your problems will start. They will start when you succeed in seducing. I'm going to use the word seducing and inducing a counterpart to be attracted to you. For most men, and in fact, the knee benders in particular, they don't know what they are getting until they get it and until they get into it, right? So you don't really know what's in it for you until you get into this dynamic, right? So it's what the Grandmaster calls or describes as, he says, you need to first secure the victory before going into the conflict. Whereas many men have gone into the conflict, and it is only when they are inside the conflict where they start to seek the point of victory. They are starting to look for the success. And they're saying, well, what's in it for me? In truth, there's nothing really in it for you, right? And I will admit to over-eagerness and losing clarity and perspective in the romance wars myself. And I'll also admit that the cost was, at least for me, far more than what I was willing to bear and even admit to myself. So having gone into these conflicts and then inside into these romance wars, whatever relationships, right? Let's use the word relationships. Having gone into a relationship first and then trying to find the point of victory, the point of success, for me, became quite an expensive waste of time, right? It became quite an expensive waste of time because now that you're in it, you're trying to see, okay, so what do I really get out of this relationship? So I'm spending money on this, I'm spending time on that, I'm spending effort on this, I'm using resources on this, I'm comforting this person, I'm expending my wisdom, my knowledge, my information, and what am I receiving in return? And realizing that I wasn't receiving anything and I was expounding more every single day, I had to come to a point where I had to admit to myself that this was a losing battle, right? This was a losing battle. And then, having heard the Grand Master's words, I realized where the fault lay. I should have known what I was getting out of this thing before I even started. Then, once I had gotten it, I could retreat, right? I could say, okay, I have now gotten what I wanted, what I set out to achieve. Is there more? Perhaps. But this is now a discussion for another day, and a different strategy will be required to acquire that. But as for this encounter, this interaction, I have now gotten what I want, and anything beyond this is actually a waste, right? It's wasteful expenditure with little or no return. The the thought behind this is to move strategically when you engage in these relationships and these romance wars, not to move emotionally, because that's really what's going to create a sense of delusion, right? Remember, all your emotions are, in fact, are chemicals and synapses firing in your brain. Logic, on the other hand, is how you function in reality, right? So you need to understand that your emotions really can be working against you even in a biological way. It's not a philosophical thing just alone, right? So they will cause a sense of delusion in you, right? But male delusion aside, right? Upon reassessing the situations in these romance war, right? I tried to deduce, where I had lost, in fact, the leverage, where I had lost the advantage, right? Where I had lost the high ground. And then I realized that I never had it at all, right? And I believe that most men, like myself, enter into these romance wars uninformed by our society, but also clouded by our own ambitions, right? We never tried to work out or predetermine what the advantages or disadvantages are from this encounter. But more than that, we never tried to work out the advantages and the disadvantages that we have or that we don't have, right? Before we enter these romance wars. So what we're going to do today is try to build a layered structure where, on the one hand, we look at our advantages and we look at the advantages that our competitor has, the knee bender. We look at our advantages, we look at the counterparts' advantages, what they have over us, right? So what we have over them, what they have over us. Then we look at our disadvantages against their advantages and against their disadvantages, right? On both sides in a realistic way. And this is possible. This is possible, right? And we are gonna try and simplify this deduction so that not only can you do it in a realistic and tangible way, you can do it quickly, right? So you can look at the situation as it is and assess it correctly in a logical way. And we're going to demonstrate that, right? What also we don't know, right, is if we have a financial, social, or biological advantage, or if they have a financial, social, and biological advantage. So we don't just need to know what the advantages and disadvantages are. We need to know what the types of advantages we have and the types of advantages they have, right? But more than that, we have to know the amounts, right? The quantities, the volumes, and the strength. So they may have intellect over us, right? But we might have a financial advantage. So while they may have a tremendous intellectual advantage, we might have a slight financial advantage. And both of those things have to be taken into account in all of our deliberations, right? We also need to assess our weaknesses and measure those up against the strengths of the counterpart along with the knee benders in a realistic way, right? One of those will be, for example, the numbers, right? There are infinitely so many more knee benders than there are bachelors, and even less vasectomites, right? And even more counterparts than that. And when you bring them all together, I mean, it's tremendous the numerical advantage that they have over bachelors, and in particular vasectomites. So we need to take those into account and realize that in the circumstances where we are in, we cannot evade. Right, the entire planet is pretty much built up of knee benders and counterparts. So evading them is really not you know, the advantage you think it is. The advantage we have is that they are at war with each other, and therefore they're not really looking into our direction. But if they did look into our direction, they would swallow us up in a day, right? It wouldn't take them very long, but they're too busy fighting their own conflicts, right? And particularly the romance wars. It's the romance wars that's keeping them going, right? And it's simultaneously the source of their strength, but also their greatest weakness. So while it might motivate them to make a lot of money, they're also blowing through that money very quickly, right? They're spending more money than what they actually make and can keep, right? So, but once and only once we have the full scope of those details and dynamics, right, can we be certain of which action or inaction to take, right? We can decide whether to attack, to stay where we are, or to retreat, right? So we can decide to advance, we can stay where we are, or we can retreat back into a safer position, right? Based on the situation that we know. So these tactics should work even if your opponent is richer, more famous, more powerful, more influential, right? If you know this information, you can move strategically and be, quite frankly, irresistible and unstoppable, right? Knowing when to advance, knowing when to stay, knowing when to retreat. These are powerful tools, particularly in the deceptive arts. And as a practitioner of the deceptive arts, you're going to need to assess situations very, very quickly and very, very clearly by using, in particular, your paranoia and your perseverance, right? You're going to need to be alert, quite alert, particularly since it's just you, right? there aren't going to be many bachelors. There aren't going to be, and if you do encounter a bachelor, in truth, bachelors, we don't really socialize with each other that much, right? That's because generally when bachelors come together, it becomes quite competitive very quickly, right? And it becomes an issue of dominance. Really, it's truly natural. It's very competitive for bachelors, right? While once that desire to establish dominance subsides, there can be peace among bachelors. But that peace, in my opinion, is easily broken by a counterpart. Right? There's always going to be a situation of, somebody brings his counterpart and somebody sees the counterpart and he says, well, I'm a bachelor, you're a bachelor, and conflict, right? Inevitable conflict. And it's always, it's never a professional thing. It's always got to do with a counterpart, you know. So if you're gonna meet other bachelors, just leave your woman at home. I'm just telling you the truth. Like it's vicious out here, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, really, but that's really how it goes. That's really how it goes. And it could all be friendly at first, and oh, we're just exchanging details. Oh, you have Instagram. Oh, I have Instagram. Oh, I'll follow you, and next thing you know, affair. That's really how quickly it goes. And so, I wouldn't trust a bachelor. I wouldn't trust bachelors either. Yes, we may share the same philosophy, but remember that philosophy is built around selfishness, right? It's built around narcissism. It's built around paranoia. It's built around the deceptive arts. No matter what a bachelor can tell you, he is a practitioner of the deceptive arts. He has to be. He has to be to survive in one way or another. Maybe not professionally, but socially, he's practicing something, right? So you can trust them if you choose to, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't trust anyone, right? I wouldn't trust anyone, and you need to know when to advance, when to retreat, and when to stay where you are. And most of your moves are going to be retreat and stay, right? It's not you very rarely are you going to advance into another person's life, not in the bachelor life, right? It's really not going to happen that way, right? But when we know when and where to and if to advance is one thing, and it can only bring us halfway to victory, right? So knowing these details has only brought us halfway to victory. Knowing how to move will bring us to the complete victory that we desire. So, so it's as the Grandmaster says, you can know how to conquer without being able to do it. So you can know how to win the affections of a counterpart and still not have the opportunity to do it until the counterpart opens themselves up to that opportunity, or until you carve open a gap for that opportunity, right? Fortunately, we will not walk this path blindly, right? And without guidance, right? I would never do you like that, right? I would never let you give you this information and then say, go and figure it out by yourself, right? I will demonstrate today as we continue our studies of the deceptive arts, right? And analyze the words of the Grand Master of the deceptive arts himself, Sun Tzu, right? And we will let his wisdom illuminate the path, right? It will be through his wisdom and analysis of his insight that will illuminate the path for us and demonstrate not only how do we strategize effectively, but also how to execute the strategy we have created. When and how, right? Now, I've said it many times before, and I'll say it again here, right? You can ruin your bachelor life. You can ruin your bachelorhood by doing too much, right? And what I mean by that is, look, I understand that in a sense it may sound like I'm putting limits on your bachelor life and on your bachelorhood. And yes, there are certain limits of the bachelor life, and I'll give you an example of them, right? We have the three C's: no commitment, no cohabitation, and no commingling of funds, right? That means you don't give your commitment away to these people, you don't be trusting them, right? Committing your life to them. Don't let them live in your house and don't live in their house either, right? Get your own place, even a small place, as long as it's yours. And don't be sharing money with them, right? Don't be sharing money. Don't be mixing your funds with them. Pay your own bills. Secure your own resources, right? And then if you want to pay for something, pay for it because you want to pay for it. But don't mix funds. Don't say, oh, let's share rent, we're gonna save money. No way. Right? No way, no way. So those are the type of limits that we have, right? And your movements and your activities, right, are not the limits that I'm trying to impose on you, right? So I'm not trying to say to you, don't go and achieve your goals, right? What I'm talking about is to avoid wastefulness. What I'm talking about is taking 10 steps to achieve a goal when 3 would do, right? What I'm talking about is paying for 3 dates when you don't need to be paying for dates at all, right, to achieve the same objective, right? And now that wastefulness is going to cause inefficiency, right? Many bachelors will try to use up as much of their free time as possible in order to sort of utilize their freedom of movement as possible, right? So what you'll find is that when you have free time as a bachelor, you're going to be trying to go out on dates, you're going to be trying to go to nightclubs, to restaurants, you're going to try to be out every night of the week, right? You're going to try to get the most out of your freedom as you can. And what's going to happen is that it's going to exhaust you, right? What this will cause is you driving to unnecessary places, you know, engaging in unnecessary, sometimes dangerous, reckless behaviors, you know, and trying out things that, quite frankly, you're not even sure you like. When all the while you actually know the things that you like and enjoy, right? And then when you're done, right, the takeaway is that you've wasted resources and time on things, quite frankly, that you don't really care about, right? And like another example is going to nightclubs every weekend, right? So what you actually want is to go to an exotic destination 2 or 3 times a year. So you want to go to a nice island, you might want to travel to the Gulf or Southeast East Asia. You might want to travel to the United States of America, right? On a vacation. It might be your dream to go to New York City for whatever reason, right? But instead of doing overtime, extra time, every time, working 6 days a week, you know, 10 hours a day, right? Saving money instead of squandering it, and then taking a vacation, 3 weeks, 2 week vacation every 90 days, every 3 months, and then going on that vacation, knowing that you have money, right? What you'll do is you'll go out every weekend and you'll go to restaurants and you'll go to Sunday brunch and Sunday lunch, right? You'll be celebrating life every single weekend. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna cost you your vacation, right? It's gonna cost you the ability to travel to that exotic beachfront destination, right? By going out every weekend, you've ruined your chances of going on those 3 vacations a year. And if you do eventually go, you won't have enough money to enjoy it, right? You're going to run out of that cash money that you actually want to spend, and instead you're going to end up using the credit card. That's going to leave you in debt, and it's going to force you to incur interest. So that money that you spend, for every dollar that you spend on a credit card, you're gonna have to pay back $1.25, right? This includes charges. So they'll charge you for the transaction. So this is how it works when you're traveling, by the way, and you use a credit card. They charge you extra for using your credit card outside of the country. Then they charge you again for using a pay terminal. So that shop that you're shopping in, they charge you for shopping at that place extra, right? It's called a sandwich fee or something, and there's two of them, right? There's the switching internationally, and then there's the switching that happens between the two banks, right? And then you get charged for that. Then you get charged for the actual item that you pay for. But then you get the value added tax, the VAT. You get charged for the VAT that you pay when you are in the country, some of which you might be able to get back when you leave if you keep your receipts. They might be able to give you that VAT back at the airport, but chances are they won't. And also, you get charged taxes back in your home country, right? So they'll tax you for that also, for that transaction. So it'll easily double your costs to use a credit card overseas, when what you really want to do is use that cash money. It's so expensive to use a credit card, but you have no choice. It'll be an emergency, right? And this is what I mean by doing too much, right? You moved unstrategically, without tactfulness, and the consequence is deficiency somewhere, right? And an inevitable loss, right? There's always going to be a loss somewhere. Analyzing the Grandmaster's words today will demonstrate this deficiency in our own strategy, and then also demonstrate how we can overcome it, right? Remember to look at these these words from two perspectives. On the one hand, the perspective where you have the advantage, and on the other, the perspective where you don't have the advantage, right? From this clear angle, we can see where strength is insufficient and where the strength is super abundant. Sun Tzu says, the art of war, then, is governed by 5 constant factors to be taken into account in one's deliberations when seeking to determine the conditions obtaining in the field. These are: 1. The moral law. 2. Heaven. 3. Earth. 4. The commander. 5. Method and discipline. Now, this is just the introduction. In our next slide, the Grandmaster expands on this, right? But keep in mind these 5 constant factors, right? So, the moral law, as you know, this is a book that's all about deception. The moral law does not talk about morality, truth, principle, virtue, honesty, all that nonsense. Throw all that away, right? Heaven, he is not talking about the place where you go after you die, right? This is hidden. This is a hidden meaning here. The earth, right? He's not talking about the ground and the soil, not entirely, right? The commander and method and discipline are also things that we are going to expound on in the next slide. But keep in mind that these are the five constant factors that you should always know. You need to know the details of these in order for you to be able to proceed and be successful in these romance wars. In a section of the book entitled Laying Plans, the Grandmaster Sun Tzu continues to say 1. The moral law causes the people to be in complete accord with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by any danger. 2. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. Earth comprises of distances, great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. 4. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. By method and discipline are to be understood the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the graduation of rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure. We are going to analyze this particular page, right? And this is how, or these are the details that you need to know when you are making your plans. The first detail is the law, not morality, the law in your country. The Grandmaster says the law causes people to be in complete accord with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by any danger. The law of the country is what makes people act against their own interest. For instance, if someone is being violent towards you, and even though you could overcome them physically and win that altercation, because you know it's illegal to respond violently yourself, you may retreat into safety, right? And then take legal recourse after that, right? It's the reason why even if you're late, you still drive at the speed limit, right? It's the reason why even if you've been driving for 25 years, you still go and renew your driver's license whenever it expires, regardless of the fact of whether you can drive or not, right? The law is what is going to determine your correct interactions with the counterpart, right? As well as the knee bender. If you break the law, I've said it a million times, you are giving ammunition to your enemies. So you need to be in a situation where you catch them breaking the law, right? And you get that evidence and you keep that evidence as your own ammunition. The first thing you need to understand when making plans, even if you're in a relationship, even if you're getting married, even if you're thinking about pursuing dating, even when you're doing pay for play, you need to consider what the law says. The last thing you want to do is to be arrested during pay for play. And in most countries, pay for play is illegal. And if you pay someone, right, there are laws, man. If you go to another country to get pay for play. If you get pay for play in your own city, in your own state, in your own province, in your own country, you are going to jail. Just remember that. Just remember that. All right. So, while many men think it's a fast way to get what you want, if it's illegal, you're going to jail. Don't do it. Don't do it. Right? If you can find a legal way of supplementing your needs by supplementing another person's needs, I don't know, what the difference between alimony is and that, but alimony is perfectly legal, while pay for play, you go to jail for that, right? And it's really something that people don't discuss in terms of pay for play. It's illegal, man. It's illegal. No matter how you look at it, you're breaking the law, right? And eventually, you're going to get caught for that. You're going to get caught out for that. Just know that, right? So the law is the first thing that you need to consider in all of your tactics and all of your plans. And if somebody tells you that you need to forego the law, you need to be careful of that person. You need to be watching them and you need to catch them breaking the law. But don't break the law yourself. You need to be serious about this, especially with this pay for play situation, right? This pay for play situation is really not what's happening. It's also not a situation that you desire to be in. You don't want to be like 29 today. You really don't want that. But other than morality and intimacy preference, the truth is you're just breaking the law, right? And somebody really needs to address that, and I'm addressing it right here. There's no circumstance where I'm gonna recommend that a bachelor go out and break the law, no matter how pleasurable it is, right? Because we're talking about self-perseverance, right? How do you preserve yourself if you're doing any kind of criminality? You might as well be selling illicit substances. You might as well be selling illicit substances, right? And get yourself arrested that way. At least then you get paid. But pay for play, just a silly way of going to jail if you ask me, right? But let's move on. Number 2, heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. So let's start with the night and day. What type of activities are you finding in the nighttime? What type of activities are you finding in the daytime? Where are you and when are you? Are you out all night or are you at work all day? When are you most conscious? When are you most awake? When you open your eyes and you look outside, is it daytime or is it nighttime? Because if it's daytime, you can expect a certain level of security and sound thinking. If it's nighttime, you can expect nothing but debauchery, right? So you need to know where you are so you can be aware and especially of your surroundings. What activities are you doing? During the daytime, the police are out, they're working, but they're not really the same type of police that are out at night. While they might catch you for speeding and give you a ticket during the day and let you continue with your day, if they catch you in the middle of the night, you're going to jail. If they catch you speeding in the middle of the night, you're not getting a ticket, you're going to jail. This is the difference between nighttime activities and daytime activities, right? Daytime activities usually involve business and commerce, unless you're on a vacation or that type of situation, or you're not, working, right? Maybe you work in the night, but most people work during the day. Nighttime activities are all about spending money and celebrating life. Restaurants, shows, sports activities, music festivals, all kinds of things. It's all about the entertainment. Why is that? It's because, well, one, most people are at work during the day, so you can spend your money at night. But also, they have those lights, right? Those bright lights, the stages, and all that. it looks so much better at night than it does during the day, right? So if they have those massive TVs broadcasting the entertainer on stage, and they got those TVs all over the side, or on the sides and whatnot, those TVs look terrible during the day. They don't really. That's why cinemas are dark, right? That's why cinemas are dark, so you can see all the action and stuff. So to have that effect, they need to have the shows either indoors in the dark, which is not ideal for most of these festivals, or they need to have them at night, right? So you need to know what type of activities you can expect during the day and what type of money you can spend during the day, and also what type of activities you have at night and what type of money you're going to spend and what type of problems are you going to encounter. So if you encounter, this is why I'm such an advocate of 0% alcohol, especially if you're not drinking at home, right? If you're going to consume alcohol, the best place is to do it at home. Then you can just fall asleep on your couch, right? But if you still need to drive home after you've consumed alcohol, that's illegal and that's a problem. So you need to be switching to something that really can keep you social, but also can keep you sober, right? Cold and heat, right? So where you're going, do you need to bring extra things? Are you going to need to bring extra blanket? Are you going to need a hat? Are you going to need your sunscreen? Are you going to need, what is the temperature? Right, and is it cold? Is it summertime? Right, we're also talking about the times and the seasons. Is it summertime? Is it wintertime? How does the counterpart behave in the summer months? Are they out? Are they traveling? Right? How do they behave in the winter months? Are they at home? Are they cuddling? Are they looking for a stable partner to be there with? Is it holiday season? Is it the festive season? Right? And how does the counterpart react to those? So that you can anticipate how and when they're going to move, as well as the knee benders, right? So you know that if it's a nighttime activity in the cold, everybody's probably going to be indoors, right? And that indoor situation can be quite volatile if there are illicit substances and that kind of thing. But you also know that if it is nighttime in the heat, most people are going to want to be outside. They're going to be moving around. It might be a festival, a flea market, or whatever the set of circumstances. Are you safe in this environment? Is there security, right? Do you feel secure? Is there an exit should something go wrong? These are the things that you need to consider, right? You know, so just be aware. Just be aware how people behave in the summer, how people behave in the winter, and when those transitions start to happen, so you can be ready, right? Be ready for whatever activities happen by day and by night. But also observe the counterpart. If they are out at night, then you know they are engaging in nighttime activities. If they are out during the day, in the cold, in the heat, you know that they are engaging in those particular type of activities, right? Nobody's out at 3 o'clock in the morning because they forgot milk. Absolutely not. That means they haven't slept, right? That means they haven't slept. Three, Earth compromises of distances, great and small, danger and security, open ground, and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. So let's talk about distances. If, let's say, okay, so the closest distance that you're really going to have is with somebody that's right next to you, right? So if you have your counterpart next to you, that means that the next person who is further away will need to traverse a much larger distance in order to get to your counterpart. So the one with the distance that's covered has the advantage. So if you are in a long distance relationship, that distance is a disadvantage to you, right? You would have the distance, the advantage of distance if you were with your counterpart right there. That way you can watch her sneakiness and if she's doing things and lying to you. But if you are engaged in a long term, long distance relationship, that relationship is doomed to fail, right? Absolutely, affairs are happening at least once a week. She's cheating on you at least once a week, right? The average person is having intimacy twice a week. So you can be certain that you're getting cheated on at least once a week. So every week that you're away, that's every week that the counterpart has an opportunity to do something where you would not be able to find out. And even if you did find out, you wouldn't be able to close that distance fast enough, right? So you have to consider distance. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about Earth, right? Distances, great and small distances. So also, being in a close proximity to the counterpart means that they have the capacity to hurt and affect you, right? So distance isn't necessarily always an advantage, right? So the closer you are to people, the more they can affect and hurt you, right? If they so choose. But also, the closer you are with a counterpart, the more money you have to spend. The one who's far away, he might have to spend money closing that distance, but then he's going to reopen that distance again, right? And he's going to be gone living whatever life he's living. So if you are close by, there is a trade off to that, right? So while you may have, influence on the counterpart and the counterpart is influence on you, the fact that you have to be in close proximity with them means that you have to maintain that proximity and that environment, right? Danger and security. So again, when you look at nighttime activities and daytime activities, you have to ask yourself, which one is the safer one? Which one is the more dangerous one? Right? Which one am I gonna be more productive in, and which one am I going to be less productive in? Right? Open ground and narrow passes. This can be a situation of, is the counterpart open for a relationship? Can you go in and out of their home? Can they come in and out of your home? Right? Do you have access to them, or is it a narrow pass? Do you have limited access and limited time? Right? Are they in a relationship with someone, and can you see them openly and freely, or do you only see them in narrow passes? Right? And if you see them in narrow passes, is the danger small or is the danger great? What are the chances of life and death? What are the chances of success and failure? Where the ground is open, the chances of success is probably very high. So if this person is open to date, open to a relationship, open to you, open to your lifestyle, open to your philosophy and your beliefs, the chances are that you'll have a much better relationship. But if they are closed, if they are stuck in their ways, if they are inflexible, if it's a narrow pass, right? What are the chances of success? What are the chances of failure, right? What do you share in common with this person and what don't you, right? These are very powerful, insightful words from the Grandmaster, but they do require you to analyze them carefully in order for you to decipher them, right? This is what happens when a master of deceptive arts writes a book, right? It takes a lot for you to decipher these secrets, but once you do, it really simplifies things, right? You just look at the times, the seasons, and you look at what advantages do the times of the day and the heat and the cold, and what disadvantages does the winter and the night, and the rain bring. How do I overcome those? Do I need to bring my car, or should we take the motorcycle? Whatever, whatever your tools are that are available to you. Are you safe? Can you be successful? Are you free to move around? Or do you have to sneak around? Right? These are the things that you need to consider. Number four is really just based on pure military strategy. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. So, wisdom, knowledge, and wisdom is what we preach here on this platform, right? Knowledge is knowing what you can do. Wisdom is knowing what you shouldn't do. Should you be going out in the middle of the night on a work week, or should you be staying home doing overtime, extra time, every time, right? So that you can go on your 3, 4 vacations a year, right? Wisdom, sincerity, benevolence. These are things that you give to people who are under your responsibility, right? You are benevolent to them, you are sincere to them, and you manage them with strictness. Strictness here means that you have to be maintaining the standard, right? It doesn't mean that you bring your authority down on people. It means if you say that the standard for the vasectomites is a vasectomy, right? This is it. It's not your wealth. It's not your education. It's not your fame. Those things are all well and good, but here the standard is much higher than wealth. It is much higher than fame. It is much higher than a PhD. Here, for you to live this bachelor life, you require only one sacrifice. One sacrifice will do it. You must lose that which you love forever. Simple. This is the strictness. This is the standard. You maintain the standard, and you maintain those standards with courage. If you're saying that I'm going to be a vasectomite before I take the chances associated with the moral law, the heaven and the earth, I need to know what that standard is. And I need to maintain that standard. So the first standard is my safety. The second standard is I'm not breaking the law to entertain anyone, right? The third standard is I'm getting a vasectomy, right? So you maintain those standards, but you do it with courage, sincerity, and benevolence, not with ego, not with alpha masculinity. That's just another form of aggression that's going to get you in prison. Wisdom, strategic maneuvering, strategic dating. Know where you have the advantage and strike there, right? By method and discipline are to be understood the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the graduation among the ranks of the rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure. Let's start with the military expenditure. The first thing you need to keep in your mind is how much this dating thing is going to cost you and how much you're willing to spend in these endeavors, right? We're just talking about laying plans, right? So we've already assessed the situation, the circumstances, the season, the weather, the times, the distance, the open ground, the narrow passes. We have already assessed that, right? The chances of life and death. But how much of that is going to be financial? The control of military expenditure. I suggest if you are intent on going out and entertaining yourself, you have a budget in mind. And I would suggest that budget be 1%. 1% of your income should be spent on entertainment, right? Now, some people might say, well, that's not enough, right? Well, that means you need to make more money, right? If you want to be spending $10,000 on entertainment, you need to be making $1 million. That's really 1%. 1% of $1 million is $10,000. $10,000 is a tremendous amount of money to spend on entertainment. With $10,000, in fact, I think you could fly around the world twice with $10,000. Just by buying the plane tickets, not hotels and that kind of thing, or tours. But you could buy a plane, you could buy enough plane tickets that will fly you around the world twice with $10,000. I'm certain of that, right? I'm certain, maybe I think you could probably do it 3 times, right? So if you're only making 10,000, that means your expenditure for entertainment and those kinds of things is only going to be $100. That's 1%. So if you want to go out for $200, you might have to wait 2 years to do that. But for me, 1% is a sufficient amount to entertain. And I can really do a lot with 1%. Like 1% for me of my entertainment budget is it's not $10,000, but it's fair. It's fair, and it's something that I don't go through. So I will spend recklessly that 1%, and I won't spend through it. I'll have plenty of change left over to go again, right? But if you're spending more than 1% of your income on entertainment, if you're saying 1% is not enough, that means you need to make more money so that you can have 1% and go wild on 1%, right? By method and discipline are to be understood the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions. This is really what it comes down to, making moves. Now that you know where the advantages and disadvantages are, I'm not talking about the personality of the counterpart, whether she likes you or not. But now that you know where the advantages and disadvantages are, how do you move? How do you marshal your troops? Who goes first? Do you go first? Does she go first? Do you go there? Does she come to you? Do you meet each other somewhere? And when you meet each other, how do you leave? Does she go her way? Do you go her way? Or do you travel back together? Right? How do you make these moves based on these circumstances? Right? So if she lives far away, is she flying to you? Are you flying to her? Or are you both flying to a neutral distance? And who's paying for that? Right? Who's paying for that? Right? The graduation of ranks among the officers, right? That's actually officers in the army. The maintenance of roads by which supply may reach the army. This is very important. So your resources and your defenses. When you are out there, do you have sufficient resources, right? Do you have the maintenance of the roads by which supply may reach you, right? Do you have your bank card, your credit card, your passport? Do you have the things that you need, and do you have the mechanism to bring those things to you should you not have them? Should you be going out, or should you bring her to your home where you have all the advantages? Or should you take her out where you have some advantages and she has some advantages, and you may or may not know what those advantages are that she has, right? The graduation of rank among officers can be considered, if you analyze it based on the Roman wars. Is this person now going to be just someone that you're dating or dating regularly, or are you going to be in a full-blown relationship with them? Right? How do you determine that? What is the standard of saying, you are now not just somebody that I'm talking to, but you are now someone that I'm in a relationship with exclusively, right? How do you graduate? How do you say to someone, you are now from here to there, right? By method and discipline. Discipline meaning the things that you will not tolerate and the things that you will tolerate, right? and the things that you can do and the things that you cannot do, where you can be successful, where you cannot. You stay where you can be successful and you evade the things that are going to cause you failure, right? There's a lot in these words, right? There's a lot in these words that really needs to be analyzed in a lot of details, right? But you need to keep these things in mind. You need to make sure that when you move, you know where you're going, how you're getting there, how you're getting back, what the advantages are, what the dangers are. Is it nighttime? Is it danger? Is it daytime? Is it safe? Is it dangerous? Is she married? Is she single? Right? What are the circumstances that I'm moving into? And if we get there, is she going to rise from somebody that I'm talking to, or what is your what is your intention in this encounter with the counterpart? Because it's only when you know what it is that you're trying to get, then you'll know if you've been successful or not. So if your intention is to acquire intimacy, but you are 4 dates deep, that means you are not achieving the goal, right? And you need to retreat. You need to either stay where you are or you need to retreat. Either way, you need to move without feeling shame and involving your ego or your temper, right? You need to realize the situation. Is it working for you? Isn't it? And then move back, right? Make sure that you have a way to get your supplies and the things that you need to come to you, or you can maintain those things at a distance, right? So whatever you need to, in order to be successful, you need to be able to maintain those things from a distance, right? And then finally, before I say finally, this is a situation that affects many streamers, right? The maintenance of roads by which supply may reach the army. A lot of streamers, especially bachelors, will be on vacation, right? Or something. And they may be like live streamers. And I'm speaking to specifically live streamers because I think I can give a solution for this, right? If you're a live streamer and you're like on vacation, right? And you're unable to live stream, you can still record content. You can still record a brand new video every day and load that, right? So you can do like an hour or two of recording and just tell your people, yo, I'm on vacation. So, this is my vacation strategy. Let's keep the message, the philosophy going. You don't need to stop working, right? You need to find a way, a creative way to keep that momentum, to keep, it says the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army. You need to keep those links, right? It means keep connected to your source of strength, keep connected to your source of income, right? So you don't need to cut out everything. You just need a different strategy, a creative strategy, but you need to keep that message going. If you're doing this every day, you got to find a way to do this every day. And then, of course, the last thing, the control of military expenditure. Guys, you need to control your budgets. You need to have a budget for your interactions. You cannot be going out there and blowing through your resources, right? You need to have a budget. 1% is my budget, and I find that it's plenty. But if you find that 1% is not enough, you'll realize that 10% is too much. You'll realize that 10% on entertainment is just throwing money away. You're going to find that it's way too much. So you need to control that or find a way to increase your income to accommodate that 1%. But you're going to see that 10% is way too much. And if you are out there with no resources and no money, you're dead, right? This is the end of the road for you. You're not going to survive on this planet without income. So now that you know the way to lay your plans, the things to look out for in terms of what advantages you have and the disadvantages that you don't have, You can include financial advantages to that, right? Let's see how you should be maneuvering, how you should be making your moves. Sun Tzu says, if you set a fully equipped army in march in order to snatch an advantage, the chances are that you will be too late. On the other hand, to detach a flying column for the purpose involves the sacrifice of its baggage and stores. Thus, if you order your men to roll up their buff coats and make forced marches without halting day or night, covering double the usual distance at a stretch, doing 100 li in order to wrest an advantage, the leaders of all your three divisions will fall into the hands of the enemy. The stronger men will be in front, the jaded ones will fall behind, and on this plan, only 1/10 of your army will reach its destination. If you march 50 li in order to maneuver the enemy, you will lose the leader of your first division, and only half your forces will reach the goal. If you march 30 li with the same objective, 2/3 of your army will arrive. We may take it then that an army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without bases of supply, it is lost. Maneuvering with an army is advantageous. With an undisciplined multitude, most dangerous. These are the words from the Grand Master of the deceptive arts, and let's analyze them. These first three paragraphs are really just indicating circumstances of misunderstanding advantages, right? Advantages and disadvantages. In the first one, he says, if you set a fully equipped army in march in order to snatch an advantage, so you take everything that you have and you go after one goal, one advantage, right? Assuming that there's a great distance to cover to get that advantage, assuming that there is somebody there, there is an opponent there. So let's say you are going out to get a counterpart, right? The counterpart is very far away from you. And if you have to travel a great distance in order to try and catch the counterpart doing something, in order to try and see if there's sneaking or something going on, in order to try and get an advantage over the counterpart, you'll be too late. The distance in time is not on your side, right? You're not going to make it, right? But on the other hand, if you leave, he says, on the other hand, to detach a flying column for the purpose involves the sacrifice of its baggage and stores. So, on the other hand, you cannot carry all your stuff and go there and move to be with a counterpart. But if you leave your resources behind, you leave your job, you leave your house, you leave your car, and you go there to try to be with the counterpart, with no money and no resources, just you, the result is going to be abject failure, right? And the same happens if you go and try to be with a counterpart, but you only have half your resources, right? You're still only going to what the Grandmaster describes as halfway to victory, right? You have the resources, you have the advantage, but you just don't have the distance and the time, right? You've only gone halfway to victory, right? This is what the Grandmaster was discussing in the previous slide with regard to distance and moving your forces, right? He says, Thus, if you order your men to roll up their buff coats and make forced marches without halting day or night, covering double the usual distance at a stretch, doing 100 li, 100 kilometers, in order to wrest an advantage, the leaders of all your three divisions will fall into the hands of the enemy. All right, it's really again a situation of, if you don't know all those previous circumstances that we discussed in the previous slide, right? If you don't know heaven or earth or the moral law, you are still only halfway to victory, because you're just going to walk yourself into a trap. If you don't have all those things in place, you are just going to walk yourself into a trap and into a loss. And all your leaders, all the leaders of your three divisions are going to fall into the hands of the enemy, right? So he describes your situation where the stronger men will be in the front, the jaded ones will fall behind, and on this plan, only 1/10 of your army will reach its destination. So, what does that mean? It means you're going to lose tremendous resources just on the move alone, just by trying to cover that distance, right? Just by trying to go on those dates, just by trying to spend that extra money, you are going to be losing a tremendous amount of resources. And by the time you arrive at your destination, you would have probably lost 90% of your resources. Which is why I was saying you need to know upfront, beforehand, what the goal is going to be, and then go straight for that goal, get that goal as quickly, as efficiently as possible, and then retreat, right? Because if you're trying to cover great distances and spend a tremendous amount of time and spend a tremendous amount of money, eventually the stronger men will be in the front. So what they'll do is they'll take the best of your resources first. The jaded ones will fall behind. Then they'll leave you with all the bad outcomes, right? And on this plan, only 1/10 of your army will reach its destination. In other words, you lose 90% of your resources and only make up about 10% of that, right? So again, what's happening is, in your attempts, not understanding when to move, when is the right move to make, right, is going to cost you to lose resources. And this is what I was saying before. You can ruin your bachelor life by doing too much, by trying to go too far too soon, by detaching a flying column to go wrest some type of advantage, right? Just for you to leave the rest of your resources and skills and capacity behind. When what you need to do is to be moving in an upward way, right? What they call upward mobility, progress and improvement. Progress is not the same thing as activity. Moving up is not the same thing as moving around, right? Moving around keeps you at the same level, at the same income bracket, but moving up elevates you, elevates your income, and elevates your lifestyle. If you march 50 li, 50 kilometers, to outmaneuver the enemy, you will lose the leader of your first division and only half your force will reach the goal. If you march 30 li with the same objective, 2/3 of your army will arrive. So effectively, the closer the distance that you cover, the less resources that you expound, the better the circumstances are that you will be successful. So the longer the distance, the longer you stay out, the more time you spend, the more resources you expound, the worse it is for you, right? So the less you know about heaven, earth, how to maneuver, how to control military expenditures, the less you are capable of that, the more you will lose, right? So the further you are from your goal, the more you have to expend. The closer you are, the less you lose, right? He says, we may take it that an army without its baggage train is lost. Without its provisions, it's lost. Without its base of supplies, it's lost. Without your resources, you have nothing, right? Without your philosophy, the deceptive arts, you're going to be lost, right? Because they will flood your brain with all kinds of other philosophies, right? Without your vasectomy, you will be lost. Without your resources, your money, your house, your sanctum of solitude, right? Your car, your chariot of fire, right? Without all those things, you are lost, right? So you need to secure yourself. You need to secure yourself first from defeat, and then look at your advantages, and then look at the disadvantages and weigh those against reality, right? These things that the Grandmaster talks about, the law, heaven in terms of night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. These are real things. These are not like economic theories where you have to, spend years to understand that. You know what time nighttime is. You know what daytime is. You know when it's cold, when it's hot. You know what happens during the summertime, the springtime, and the winter and the autumn or the fall. You know what happens during those seasons. You know how people behave. Plan ahead, plan accordingly. Know if you have distance on your side, right? Know if where you're going is open ground or if it's a narrow pass. Know what the chances of your success and your failures are with this counterpart, and for how long you can sustain that success and that failure. These are things that are very common to every man. These are very simple theories, but they take a moment to understand, but a lifetime to master, right? And if you find yourself maneuvering without your resources, your supplies, your philosophy, your vasectomy, your skills, and you go into those romance wars, right? And you get there and you maneuver haphazardly, throwing resources here and there, not cultivating them, right? You're going to burn out your energy. You're going to burn out your resources. You're going to exhaust your strength and still not achieve your objective because you should have known beforehand what you want. Know thyself. Achieving your goals will always start from you by deciding what those goals are. The Grandmaster concludes here, where we will conclude the video also. He says, maneuvering with an army is advantageous, with an undisciplined multitude, most dangerous. I would say maneuvering with those that are yours. In other words, as a bachelor, you are the army. Maneuvering with yourself, knowing, especially if you're out there traveling, right? Planning your own tours, your own entertainment, your own place to stay according to your own budget, flying in your own time, right? Because you've done your extra time, your overtime every time, right? You haven't been going out every weekend, so you've been saving 60 days, 90 days straight, just paying only what you need to pay. Now you've got money for that plane ticket and you can travel, right? You're going to find that traveling by yourself, living by yourself, running companies by yourself is going to be quite an advantage. But if you are with a counterpart who is determined to be indisciplined, determined to live an exciting life, determined to not plan things, determined to have serendipity and spontaneity, they're going to ruin things, right? They're going to ruin things. I mean, like, consider this, like, if you have a trip to go to, let's say the Palace of Versailles in Paris, right? Which is just outside. Well, it's about a train ride away from Paris, right? You gotta switch trains on the way. But whatever the situation, if you decide at the train station, let's go grab a cup of coffee and have a slice of cake, right? That 20 minutes because you think, oh, it's just a quick cup of coffee. No, it'll take them 5 to 10 minutes just to make the coffee and then serve it to you, and another 15 minutes to eat it. Not to mention the 5 minutes it takes for you to walk there and the 5 minutes to walk back. You would have lost 30 minutes and you would have missed the train. Right. And this is the consequence of spontaneity and not sticking to the plan. This is exactly what the counterpart does. Whatever plan you have, she thinks by adding something to it, she's making it better. It never occurs to her that she would be costing a disadvantage of some kind. Right? Time, seasons, distances, right? These are all the things that you need to consider. Maneuvering, right? How do you maneuver and who you maneuver with? Who you maneuver with. This is an important thing here. It's one thing to know your advantages, your disadvantages, to lay out your plan. It's another thing to know when and how to make the move and the type of moves to make and how to secure your resources while you're making it. It's a completely different story when you're talking about who you are moving with. And the Grandmaster says very clearly here, that counterpart that you are with is most dangerous. This is how the Grandmaster of the Deceptive Arts describes the counterpart. Maneuvering with an army, with disciplined, sober-minded people is a great advantage. But when you maneuver with that counterpart of yours, it is most dangerous. And I will admit to know this in my own experiences, in my own life. And I will tell you that maneuvering with a counterpart is extremely dangerous because they make just the most craziest decisions. And what you'll find is that they don't take into consideration the law. They don't take into consideration night, day, cold, heat, or seasons. They don't think about the distances. They don't think about the ground that they'll be on. Is it open ground? Is it a narrow pass? They don't consider any of those things. They just consider the coffee. Right? And when you miss the train, both of you are going to be so miserable because it's gonna take another hour for you to catch that train. And when you get there, you see how long those lines are outside the Palace of Versailles in that heat, in that summertime heat, right? And you forgot your hat and whatnot because you were just expecting to just walk right in. It's gonna make you miserable. But if you had gone there by yourself, you would have really had a fantastic time. You would really have had a fantastic time, right? You would have been there on time. You would have made your content, got your footage, right? Absorbed the history, right, of the great King Louis XIV. Enjoyed that delightful restaurant that they have there, right? French cuisine at its best, and then off you go, right? Taking in the artworks, the opulence, it can be quite delightful. Or you can go with a counterpart and they'll ruin it. And they'll ruin it. They'll ruin, you'll spend the whole day instead of taking in those gardens. Louis XIV's gardens were tremendous. They still are today, hundreds of years later. To take in that spectacular view is going to be spoiled by the counterpart because all she'll want to do is have you take pictures of her. Undisciplined multitudes, most dangerous. These are the words of the Grandmaster of the Deceptive Arts. And this is how you need to consider your movements when you are in these romance wars. You need to avoid wastefulness, right? You need to avoid wastefulness. You need to avoid trying to do too much in order to prove or to demonstrate the bachelor life. That can be quite dangerous and wasteful. This is not to imply that you shouldn't demonstrate how good the bachelor life is by going to a nice restaurant from time to time and making your content. That's not a problem. What is a problem is if you're spending money and wasting resources trying to entertain a counterpart, trying to get something that, quite frankly, anybody can get for free. You're not moving efficiently and you're not making the best moves. And eventually, it's going to cost you, right? It's going to cost you because you're going to need your resources. The purpose of the deceptive arts, quite frankly, is to allow you to be able to get any number of resources from anywhere, anytime, right? To be able to open any door. And when you start maneuvering with people who cannot hold the line, right? Who have no self discipline within themselves, you may fail in the deceptive arts and you may fail in all of your other endeavors. Right? So keep these words from the Grand Master in your mind, meditate on them, learn them, study them, get the book, read that book, and try to use his wisdom in your time. Remember, these words were written at a time of great war, right? Just never ending war, deception, death, misery, all kinds of things. And he wrote a book that would allow you to be successful in the worst of worst circumstances. So you need to read that book and apply it to the reality of today, right? And this will help you to thrive. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it and I appreciate your attention. I am the Ancient One. I am the Bachelor Supreme, and I wish you a lovely day.